Welcome to the Founder's Journey by Ulu ES. I am your host, Muhammad Ahmad, and today we have a special guest, Nathan Means. Nathan is a keynote speaker, workshop leader, and conference MC. He helps people develop confidence, communication skills, and leadership through improv and comedy. His work has been taken across different world, and including Bahrain, Oman, Slovenia, Austria, and Finland. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
You're welcome. Me too. So, public speaking is a skill I usually founders struggle with, especially when pitching their startup ideas. You have worked with countless persons. What's the most challenging thing they face when it comes to presenting?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is getting in the room. So they have to definitely do some work on how do they position their startup so that it's interesting enough and it's compelling enough to get in the room just to start. Once they're in the room, I find that founders tend to overcomplicate their pitch just so much because they often will use industry language in their pitch, but these investors oftentimes don't have the industry expertise that they have. So when they start talking about all of these industry words and industry terms, they have no idea what you're saying. And so you lose the ability to be persuasive. And when you're in these pitches, that's the whole goal, is to persuade them, ideally, to invest in your company.
I do agree. The first step is like icebreaker for them. Once they get in, they feel comfortable and then all complexities will go away.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
Yeah. Ideally, we treat it like you're pitching to a 12-year-old. You know,
that's great.
And investors, of course, aren't 12-year-olds typically.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
But we want the language to be so clear that if the investor is sitting there and their child is in the room, the child would also say, this is a huge problem. We need to solve this, and we can do that here.
Great. Okay. So you have coached founders on their presentations. What's your go-to advice for someone preparing for a pitch or keynote speech?
I would say you have to practice far more than you expect that you should practice.
That's great.
I think that it's helpful to just every day run through your pitch. Or if I have a big keynote coming up, I'll run through the entire keynote every day leading up to the pitch. It's helpful to make sure that when we write speeches, oftentimes we will literally write them or type them, but most of us speak differently than we type. So then when we go to say it, it sounds like we're like reading a textbook. And it's uncomfortable because we haven't practiced enough to be able to read that textbook. So it's much easier, I find, if we get the bullet points down and we understand the ideas we want to say. And then after that, we really go in and just keep rehearsing the points so that we can really effectively describe exactly what we're trying to get across to the audience.
Great. I feel like we should be speaking from our heart. We can definitely memorize, but it feels like emotions in the words. You feel like connected when you are talking with someone. So we should be speaking up like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Ideally, when we see the audience, we look at the audience and we make a real connection with them rather than saying, someone's given me an hour to speak, so now I will look at the back of the room and I will speak to the back wall. We want to see the change we're making in people's eyes and look at them.
Great. I got it. So many people assume that great speakers are naturally confident. But I'm sure a lot of things comes down to the preparation. How do you personally prepare for a big speech?
Yeah, so I had a keynote with about 600 people in the audience about 3 days ago. And my rehearsal process is essentially when I have a keynote that has 600 people, 1,000 people, something like that, I'll try to book smaller events leading up to it because we want to test out material and we ideally don't want to test it out on these big audiences. So for any presentation, we should try to find the smallest audience we can to test it initially. But what I do is I'll test it with them. But before every presentation, I'm doing a couple hours a day of going through the presentations. I also know that it's going to be incredibly exhausting to go through some of these presentations because there's a lot of physical labor, because when we're going through it, we're standing up, we're moving. But I'm also treating it like there are 600 people in front of me. So it makes it a very like emotional performance as well, because we're not just going through reading the script saying, okay, so then I'm going to talk about communication in this context. We're like actually doing it.
Great.
Such that I can watch it, because I'll record them as well. And then I'll see, okay, I need to improve this section and improve that section. So essentially I try to find smaller stages, and then I rehearse for at least a couple hours every day and record those rehearsals. And then when I watch it back, I can say, from an audience point of view, what I'm doing here is a little weird. I should adjust that. And it makes the whole process much smoother.
Yeah, I totally understand that practice makes the person perfect. So
yeah, and it makes you comfortable with the words, and especially the timing. One piece of advice I was always told was professionals end on time.
Oh, that's great.
And
good to know that.
Yeah, and so at a conference, if the session is 2 to 3, the keynote ends at 3. If you have to figure it out, you know.
Yeah.
Doesn't end at 3:10. It ends at 3.
Okay. So you use improve techniques to help people improve their public speaking. So how does that work?
Yeah, so improv comedy is essentially actors getting on stage and creating a full play in front of an audience. To do that, we have no props, no script, no time to prepare. We're just going on stage and saying, what is an object that fits inside of a box? And we ask the audience. So can you give me an example? What's something that fits in a small box?
Okay.
What is one thing?
Could be anything.
Could be anything,
Yeah.
but let's say a potato.
Potato.
Right?
Yeah.
So then we take that idea and we have hundreds of eyeballs staring at us. We have to try to figure out, in this pressurized situation, how do we give these people what they came here for? They came here to laugh and to see stories.
Yeah.
So maybe we're potato farmers and we're building potatoes. Maybe we are the potatoes. You know, it can get a little weird, but we use improv because you go through this process of being in a pressurized situation where the spotlight turns on you, and you have to figure out how to make it work. And it's very similar to a lot of these really tough conversations we have in our lives where you're asking for a promotion and you're really stressed, your heart rate's going up.
Yeah.
It feels like everyone's looking right at you. Or, you know, you're pitching an idea to your team and you're uncomfortable. Or you're on the chopping block because you haven't been doing great at work.
Yeah.
All of those moments, we have to be able to thrive when we're put on the spot.
Yeah.
And improv is one way that we can have fun learning how to be on the spot and really thrive in those moments when they really matter and they affect our lives. So that's the principle of improv.
Great. So what's the simple improve exercise our listeners can have today to improve the communication skills?
Yeah, I mean, there's one that will sound a little self-promotion-y. but
It's fine.
But you can, I think you can use it. I have this game called Pivot Pitch.
Okay.
And this game, I created it to help people be more confident in their communication skills. And the essential principle is that we can, of course, prepare for many conversations in life, but many of them we can't. So Pivot Pitch is a game where you have 2 cards. You get an adjective card and a noun card. 2 words that create the name of a business idea that you're going to pitch.
Great.
And then you pitch it after about a minute of preparation. And you pitch it to the entire room. After your pitch, you get asked a question. So we might have like microscopic whale. And you have to pitch microscopic whale. And be like, wouldn't it be cute if like instead of a goldfish, you had like a little baby whale? And that'd be. And then you get asked a question that's like, hey, why did your company buy a lion? And you're in front of the entire group and you have to figure it out.
Yeah.
That's when you're in that moment, you can practice the spotlight turning on and you having to figure it out. Of course, it's a very jovial, fun way to do it.
Exactly.
But the real principle is that you have to be willing to put yourself in these situations that are, a little stressful. Otherwise, when you're pitching ideas to your team, when you're asking for a promotion, when you're put on the spot, it's so stressful that you just can't operate anymore.
Exactly.
And I always tell people, of course they can literally get a copy of Pivot Pitch, and they can also write adjectives and nouns on pieces of paper and rip them up and combine them.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
So startup founders often pitch to investors, customers, or sometimes partners as well. What's the biggest mistake you see in their presentations?
The biggest mistake is certainly using words that they don't understand.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes founders will you have one startup pitch for customers, and you can use oftentimes a lot of industry language because the customers know it. And then sometimes they'll try to use that same pitch on investors and then be confused when it doesn't work. And it's because the investors don't have the same knowledge. So I have a quick example.
Yeah, sure.
There's one founder who helps people. Actually, I won't tell that story. We can cut that out.
But I also experienced that when I was talking with my clients, pitching up my idea, what can I do for them, I also experienced the same thing. Most of the people are like, they love to hear this simple language. They want to understand how their journey will look like. So if we use very complex industry words, they will get confused and they will say, no, maybe this person is not right for us. They will skip us. So I totally understand what you're talking about. So at Startup Weekend Ulu, participants pitch ideas from teams and present their projects in just 52 hours. Actually 54 hours. What's your best tip for someone pitching in a high pressure environment like that?
I would say the biggest thing is that we have to just tell the story. Well, I want to hear the story of the customer because I want to know how big of a problem this is.
Okay.
I don't want to hear how you can make 1 million people's lives 0.1% better. I want to hear how you're going to change one person's life and it's going to be massive change for their life. And then say, but it's not just this person. It is much bigger. And that's one way that we can really humanize these problems so that we're not just sitting there and saying, academically, this seems like a problem that we should solve. But instead we're saying, oh my goodness, we need to solve this right now. And we can do that together. And we want that kind of emotion where the judges say, not only is this incredibly important that we change right now, but intellectually I get it.
Yeah. I think it's the micro focus. Trying to change the one person life is much more better rather than trying to target the millions, I believe. So it's a good technique to go ahead with that. So body language and voice play a huge role in how speaker is perceived. What's one thing every founder should consider in mind when they are delivering their pitch?
I mean, the easiest fix here is to record yourself when you're preparing and actually treat it like there are hundreds of people in our audience. Because if you can get your heart rate up, do some push-ups before you do it, do some push-ups, and then act like there are 1,000 people in front of you, you might see some mannerisms that are a little strange. And when you see those, you can decide to fix them. Each person will have different mannerisms that might be distracting.
Exactly.
But I don't think that we're in a position anymore that we have to stand behind podiums and say, hello, my name is Nathan. Like, we can still have fun on stage, but that fun has to be not distracting to the message.
Got it. So, fear of public speaking is real. You work with people who are very uncomfortable on stage. What's your best strategy to overcome that fear?
It's practicing.
Again, comes down to practicing.
Yeah, I mean, it's uncomfortable to continuously practice because it's hard and it's already a scary thing, so it's almost easier to just avoid it entirely.
Got it.
But what I usually tell people is, let's say you're giving a presentation in front of 1,000 people, and you're doing it on stage X. Ideally, you could practice in front of 1,000 people on stage X, but that's not going to happen. There's no way you'll be able to. So maybe one step down is on stage X in front of people who are walking, that just happen to be in the room. And then maybe one more step down is on stage X, but there's no one in the room. And then we keep going down until you're basically sitting in your closet talking to yourself. But each step of this progression gets a little bit more intense. And so every time we want to practice with the highest level we're comfortable with in the moment.
Got it.
So if you're not comfortable to do it in front of real people, maybe you set up your phone and just record yourself, knowing it's not going to go anywhere, but you record yourself just to put a little added pressure on yourself.
Got it. So, have you ever had a moment on stage where something went completely wrong, that was totally unplanned? How did you handle it?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one. There are tons of moments where things go not as planned. In my keynotes especially, I bring audience members on stage. And so these are people who are not trained and don't know they're coming on stage until 5 seconds before they volunteer. So interactions with just that, sometimes there's things we can't expect. But again, the improv training helps us to go through that. I think the biggest thing when things go wrong is to just know your material so well that you can still ride that wave of, hey, this isn't going as planned. And that's okay. All that really matters is that we stay on track and we keep moving forward. And that basically, if something needs to be dealt with, you either deal with it and move on, or you say, excuse me, the projector isn't working. And then you just continue your talk, knowing that the tech team is going to work on the projector not working. But I think it's about realizing what you can control and trying to just recognize, if you know your material well enough, most of the things that go wrong on stage don't really matter.
Got it. So you have already accomplished a lot, but I'm sure there will be much more ahead. What's next for you?
I'm really excited. This year I should do about 150 talks. And I'm excited to just see where that goes. I really am also looking at getting some of these talks more online.
All right.
Clipping them, putting those online. Because there's a long-standing way of growth for speakers is taking all of your keynotes, recording them, and then taking these little moments from each of them, putting them online, and people going, that's what that guy looks like on stage. I should book that person. So that's what I'm working on now.
Okay. Nathan, this has been an inspiring conversation. Thank you very much for sharing your journey and insights with us. To our listeners, if you want to improve your public speaking and presentation skills, check out Nathan's work. And if you are in Oulu, don't miss the Startup Weekend Oulu and for the incredible experiences of pitching and the startup building. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.